No one in downtown Seoul ever noticed the cleaning staff of the Aurora Tower. That was the rule, unspoken, unquestioned. They were part of the background, like the soft hum of the vents or the polished marble floors. Naomi Trent, however, wasn't part of anything. She was invisible by necessity. 3 shifts daily, 2 extra jobs, tight bills, and a body that hadn't known real rest for months. And on that specific dawn, while scrubbing the last sink on the 34th floor, the weight of the day simply won. She entered the last cubicle to clean, sat on the closed toilet, and collapsed. She fell asleep instantly, forehead resting on her forearm, leg bent at an uncomfortable angle that only truly exhausted people can endure. She didn't see the silent footsteps, didn't hear the door open, didn't smell the woody cologne that always announced his presence. He saw her first in the reflection. Ryu Seojin, the man half the city feared and the other half obeyed. Korean Mafia boss, heir to an empire built by force, hidden owner of Aurora Tower. And in that instant, he found his cleaning lady sitting on the toilet, as if the world had ended. Seojin stood still, motionless, stunned. The woman was small, curved, breathing slowly, like someone who had been fighting life for too long. His first impulse was to call someone, wake her, send her home. But something stopped his hand. The image stirred something in him he thought was dead, compassion and also curiosity. Why would someone reach the point of sleeping, sitting in a corporate bathroom at 3 in the morning? He closed the door silently and stayed watching. Not as a predator, not as a boss, but as a man facing a mystery he couldn't explain. Welcome to Korean Mafia lovers. This incredible story will show you how unexpected compassion can transform even the most hardened hearts. Comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more powerful stories like this one. The next morning, Naomi woke with the shock of someone who's always running late. She looked around, realized where she was, and her heart raced. No. She cleaned her face, stretched her sore neck, and ran to finish what was left before anyone noticed. But they had already noticed. In the main office, 2 suited men discussed respect, internal protocols, and civilian employees. And sitting behind the desk was him, the same man who had seen her sleep. Naomi didn't know this yet. When she entered to collect the trash, Seojin looked up, not from the tablet, not from reports, but at her. Something in his posture made the subordinates look too. They became tense. She blushed, and Seojin became intrigued. No one looked at that woman. No one saw her. But he did. "Your name," he said. She stopped, holding the trash bag against her chest. Naomi Trent." Her voice trembled not from fear of him, but from exhaustion. He stood slowly. The movement commanded attention from everyone in the room. "Who made you work until you collapsed?" She almost laughed, but held back. "Life, sir." The men behind him exchanged glances. She wasn't afraid. She didn't pose. She had truth. And that shocked him more than any business report ever had. "How many jobs do you work?" he asked, his voice softer than his subordinates had ever heard. "3, sir. Sometimes 4 on weekends." "And you live where?" "Hongdae District, small room above a convenience store." Each answer painted a picture that disturbed him, not because of her poverty. He'd grown up around poverty, but because of her dignity despite it. "Leave the trash," he said suddenly. "Someone else will handle it today." His men stared. Naomi blinked in confusion. "Sir, you can rest. Go home, come back tomorrow at normal hours." She wanted to protest, but something in his tone suggested this wasn't a request. It was protection disguised as an order. After she left, the room remained silent until one subordinate dared speak. "Boss, she's just a cleaning lady." Seojin's gaze could have frozen fire. "She's a person working 3 jobs to survive while we complain about profit margins. Anyone who has a problem with that can find employment elsewhere." The message was clear, and it spread through the building like wildfire. For days, Seojin observed discreetly. Naomi cleaned as if returning dignity to spaces. She placed discreet post-its warning about pipes about to break. She arranged small details abandoned by employees too rich to care. But when she thought no one was watching, she put her hands on her lower back and breathed deeply, like someone carrying the weight of 2 worlds, and still smiled at the security guards, still thanked the drivers. still brought medicine to the elderly receptionist when she noticed her coughing too much. Seojin saw everything. And he also saw what deeply irritated him, some of his own men treating Naomi like air, as if she didn't exist, as if she were disposable. The irritation turned to fury when he saw a thug bump into her on purpose to test limits. She apologized. He didn't. That night, Seojin entered the meeting room with steps so firm that even veterans felt fear. "New rule," he said, voice cutting through the air like steel. "From today, any civilian employee is untouchable. Respect isn't optional. Anyone who looks sideways at someone in here will deal with me personally." Silence, stares, tension thick enough to choke on, until a subordinate dared ask, "Is this because of the cleaning lady?" The glass in Seojin's hand cracked, not from pressure, from the controlled fury running through his veins. "This is because you confused power with cruelty," he replied, his voice deadly calm. "Because you forgot that strength protects the vulnerable, it doesn't exploit them." And explained nothing more. But everyone understood. The rules had changed, and anyone who didn't adapt would be removed. The next day, Naomi noticed the difference immediately. Security guards nodded respectfully. Office workers said good morning instead of pretending she didn't exist. Even the executives acknowledged her presence. She didn't know why, but she felt it. The building's atmosphere had shifted, and somehow she suspected the mysterious owner she'd never met had something to do with it. But changes in the criminal underworld never go unnoticed. Word traveled fast that Ryu Seojin was implementing humanitarian policies in his operations. Some saw it as evolution, others saw it as weakness. Kim Daeho, leader of a rival faction, belonged to the latter group. "He's lost his edge," Daeho told his lieutenants during a clandestine meeting in a Gangnam basement. "Ryu Seojin used to be feared across 3 districts. Now he's worried about cleaning ladies' feelings. What do you want to do about it? We test him. See how far this compassion extends when it costs him something real." Meanwhile, Naomi had begun to piece together fragments of truth about her mysterious benefactor, the way certain conversations stopped when she entered rooms, the deference shown to men in expensive suits who visited late at night, the careful language everyone used when discussing Mr. Ryu. She wasn't naive. Growing up in her neighborhood had taught her to recognize the signs of organized crime. But she also recognized something else: genuine change. Whatever Seojin was involved in, he was trying to do it differently. 3 weeks passed before Naomi encountered Seojin again. This time it was intentional on his part. He found her in the break room at 2 a.m. eating a simple sandwich while reviewing what looked like study materials. "Working and studying?" he asked from the doorway. She looked up, startled. "Mr. Ryu, I didn't hear you come in. What are you studying?" She hesitated, then showed him the business administration textbook. "Online courses. I'm trying to improve my situation." He sat across from her without invitation. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes that matched her own. "How long have you been doing this?" 2 years. It's slow, but..." She shrugged. "Better than staying in the same place forever." "And your family? Do they support this?" Her expression darkened slightly. "My family thinks I'm wasting time. They say people like us don't get to dream big." "People like us?" "Poor people. Black women, immigrants' daughters." She met his gaze directly. "People who clean toilets for rich men." The honesty hit him like a physical blow. No one spoke to him with such raw truth. "And what do you think?" he asked. "I think..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think the world tells us our place, but we get to decide if we stay there." Something shifted in Seojin's chest. This woman, exhausted, overworked, struggling, had more hope than he'd felt in years. "The changes in the building," she said suddenly. "The way people treat staff differently now. That was you, wasn't it?" He didn't deny it. "Why?" she asked. "Because it was right. That's not a business reason." "No," he agreed. "It's a human reason." They sat in comfortable silence, sharing the space like two people who understood exhaustion from different angles. "Naomi," he said finally, "if you could do anything, be anything, what would it be?" She smiled, small but genuine. "I'd want to help people. Maybe run programs for working families, create support systems for people trying to improve their lives. That's specific. I've thought about it a lot during long shifts. He studied her face, seeing dreams that poverty hadn't killed, determination that exhaustion hadn't broken. What if I told you there might be opportunities here, in this building? I'd ask what the catch is. He laughed, actually laughed. When was the last time someone had made him do that? Smart woman. Tired woman. We learned to spot traps. Over the following days, their late-night conversations became routine. Seojin would find excuses to work late, and Naomi would time her breaks to coincide with his presence. They talked about books, about dreams deferred, about the weight of responsibility. She learned that he had wanted to be a teacher before his father's death, thrust him into leadership of the family business. He learned that she sent half her earnings to her mother in Busan, supporting medical treatments for diabetes. "You're supporting your family while putting yourself through school and working 3 jobs?" he asked one night. 4 jobs this week, Mrs. Kim needed help with her restaurant inventory. "When do you sleep?" "When I can, like in bathrooms, apparently." He didn't laugh at the reference. Instead, his expression grew serious. "Naomi, what you're doing, it's extraordinary. It's survival. No, survival is just getting by. What you're doing is building something better while carrying everyone else." She looked at him with surprise. No one had ever framed her struggles as strength before. "What about you?" she asked. "What are you building?" The question caught him off guard. He'd spent so long maintaining what his father built, he'd never considered creating something new. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe that's the problem." But 3 days later, war between 2 factions hit Aurora Tower. A rival group decided to attack the Mafia's logistics office in that same building, believing Seojin wouldn't be present. They were wrong. But the situation quickly spiraled out of control. Screams in the hallway, doors slamming, weapons being drawn, alarms blaring. Naomi was on the 34th floor again, and heard everything. Her first reaction was to run to the elevator. Her second reaction, the truest one, was to stop. Something didn't add up. The shots came from the corridor where the administrative rooms were, but the employees were all on the other side. If someone panicked and tried to flee, they'd get hurt. She looked at the building model that architects always left on the table, saw the evacuation corridor, saw the security door. Then she ran to the control panel and activated the locks, exactly in the zone where the invaders were. They were trapped. The employees were safe. She saved 15 people with 1 button. And when Seojin entered the floor, cleaning blood from his hand and searching for survivors, he found Naomi leaning against the wall, panting nervously, but standing. "You," he began. "I just, closed the right doors." He approached, slowly, as if not wanting to break her. "You could have run." She looked at him with honesty that hurt. "I live running, Mr. Ryu. Eventually you get tired." He breathed deeply. For the first time in years, his shoulders lowered. "You saved lives tonight. I just did what made sense. Most people don't think clearly under pressure. Most people haven't spent their lives under pressure." Again, that brutal honesty, that refusal to romanticize struggle. "Naomi," he said, his voice carrying weight she'd never heard before, "there are things about me, about this building, that you don't know." "I figured. And you're not curious?" "I'm curious about a lot of things. Doesn't mean I need to know everything to know what's right." In the following weeks, Naomi became someone everyone noticed, not because Seojin ordered it, but because her actions spoke for her. Employees respected her. Some even asked for opinions in the hallways, and Seojin began to see her as something he'd never had in his life, dirty with violence, a point of light. She had no interest in his money, no fear of his authority, no shame of her own poverty, and a man like him wasn't used to being seen with such clarity. They began talking more openly during her shifts. Nothing romantic, nothing calculated, just human. Until one calm night after everyone left, Naomi approached the huge window he liked to stare at. "You work too much," she said. "And you sleep in bathrooms." She laughed, and the sound of her laughter broke something inside him, something old, something hardened. "You changed things here," she said. "People comment. They needed to change. Seems like you did too." He didn't deny it. The look he gave her in that moment wasn't from a boss, it was from a man, from someone who recognizes the person silently rebuilding him. "Naomi," he said, voice lower than usual, "what you did during the attack, that wasn't just quick thinking. That was courage. It was common sense. No, it was choice. You chose to help instead of hiding." She turned from the window to face him fully. "What are you trying to say, Mr. Ryu?" "I'm trying to say that I see you, really see you, and I think you see me too." The air between them shifted, became charged with possibility. "I see a man who's trying to be better than he was," she said softly. "And I see a woman who's already better than most people will ever be." They stood there, the city lights painting shadows across their faces, both aware that something fundamental had just changed between them. The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was real. Seojin found himself making decisions he'd never considered before. Better working conditions for all staff, medical insurance for part-time workers, respect protocols that his men followed not from fear, but from understanding. Naomi noticed these changes but never took credit. She simply continued her work with the same quiet dignity that had first caught his attention. But the changes didn't go unnoticed by everyone. Kim Daeho had been watching Aurora Tower with growing suspicion. The building had always been a front for Seojin's operations, but lately something was different, softer, and in their world, softness was blood in the water. "He's implementing employee welfare programs," Daeho spat during a meeting with his lieutenants. "The Ryu Seojin I knew would have laughed at such weakness. What do you want to do about it? We test him. See how far this compassion extends." Meanwhile, Naomi had begun to piece together the truth about Seojin's real business. She wasn't naive. You didn't grow up in her neighborhood without recognizing the signs. The way certain men deferred to him, the late-night meetings, the careful language everyone used around him. One evening, as she cleaned his office, she found him staring at financial reports with unusual intensity. "Bad news?" she asked softly. He looked up, surprised by her concern. "Complicated decisions. Some of my business partners don't appreciate the new policies. The ones about treating people better. Those exactly." She set down her cleaning supplies and moved closer to his desk. "Mr. Ryu, can I ask you something?" He nodded. "What kind of man do you want to be when you look in the mirror?" The question hit him like a physical blow. No one had ever asked him that. Not his advisors, not his enemies, not even himself. He started, then stopped. "I don't know anymore." "Then maybe," she said gently, "you're becoming the right kind." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. His face darkened as he read. "What is it?" Naomi asked, noting his expression. "Someone leaked information about our new policies to rival factions. They see it as weakness." He stood abruptly. "You need to leave now." "Why?" "Because they know you influenced these changes, and they'll use that against me." Naomi's blood ran cold. "They know about me. They know enough." His voice carried a weight she'd never heard before. "Pack only essentials. I'm moving you somewhere safe. I can't just disappear from my life. Your life won't exist if you stay here tonight." The gravity in his tone convinced her, but as she gathered her few belongings, questions multiplied in her mind. "Seojin," she said, using his first name for the first time. "What exactly are you involved in?" He stopped packing her things and looked at her directly. "Things that would make you run if you knew the full truth. Try me." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I run an organization that operates outside the law. We control territory, we settle disputes that courts can't handle, and we protect our interests through various means. Your Mafia." "Yes." She absorbed this, her expression unreadable. "And the changes you've been making are because you made me realize that power should protect, not destroy. So I'm in danger because I accidentally made a crime boss grow a conscience?" Despite everything, he almost smiled. "That's one way to put it. And if I stay, what happens to me? You become a target, forever. And if I run, you're safe, but we never see each other again." The weight of the choice settled between them. Naomi looked around her small apartment, at the textbooks, the carefully budgeted groceries, the life she'd built from nothing. "There's a third option," she said quietly. "Which is?" I stay, and we face this together. Naomi, you don't understand what you're saying. I understand that you're the first person who's ever seen me as more than just someone who cleans up after others. I understand that you're trying to change, and that's harder to do alone. She met his eyes. And I understand that running away from every hard thing is what keeps people like me invisible forever. As she spoke, Seojin made calls that would reshape the power structure of Seoul's underworld, but all he could think about was keeping one exhausted cleaning lady safe, the woman who had somehow become the center of his world. The safe house arrangements were made within hours, but as they prepared to leave, Naomi had one more question. When this is over, she said, what happens to us? I don't know, he admitted. I've never had an us before. Neither have I, not a real one. They looked at each other in the dim light of her apartment, both aware that they were about to cross a line that would change everything. Are you sure about this? He asked one final time. I'm sure about you, she replied. The rest we'll figure out. The drive to the safe house was silent, both lost in their own thoughts. Naomi watched Seoul's neon lights blur past the window, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or the bravest decision she'd ever made. Seojin's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his mind racing through contingency plans and worst-case scenarios. But underneath the strategic thinking was something he'd never experienced before, the desperate need to protect someone who mattered more than his own life. When they arrived at the modest apartment that would be her temporary home, Seojin did a thorough security check, while Naomi stood in the center of the living room, feeling displaced from her own existence. The guards outside look like ordinary residents, he explained. They'll rotate shifts, but there will always be someone watching. You have my direct number. Use it for anything. Anything at all. She nodded, but he could see the uncertainty in her eyes. Naomi, he said softly, I know this is overwhelming. It's not that, she said. It's just... I've spent my whole life being invisible, and now I'm important enough to hide. You were always important. The world just wasn't paying attention. The safe house was modest but secure, a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, watched by guards who looked like ordinary residents. Naomi sat by the window watching rain streak the glass, feeling displaced from her own existence. Seojin visited daily, always bringing news that grew more troubling. The rival factions had united against him, using his softness as justification for a power grab. His own men were divided, some loyal to his new direction, others questioning his leadership. This is my fault, Naomi said during one of his visits. I should never have... Don't! His voice was sharp. Don't take responsibility for other people's cruelty. But if I hadn't been there that night, if you hadn't seen me... If you hadn't been there, he interrupted, I would still be the man who confused fear with respect, who thought power meant taking everything and giving nothing back. He sat across from her, his usual commanding presence softened by exhaustion. Naomi, you didn't make me weak. You made me human. She studied his face, the sharp angles that could intimidate entire rooms, now vulnerable in the lamplight. Tell me about your life before, she said, before all this. There was no before. My father groomed me for this from childhood. I learned to fight before I learned to read properly. I learned to command before I learned to question. And your mother died when I was 8, cancer. My father said grief was weakness, so I learned not to feel it. Naomi's heart ached for the boy who had been forced to become a weapon. What did you want to be when you were young? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. A teacher, he finally said. I wanted to be a teacher. You still could be, in a way. How? You're teaching your men that strength and kindness aren't opposites. You're teaching this city that power can be used to protect instead of exploit. And what are you teaching me? That it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. The conversation was interrupted by urgent knocking. One of Seojin's men entered with grim news. Boss, they've made their move. 3 of our legitimate businesses hit simultaneously, and they're demanding a meeting. Seojin's expression hardened. When and where? Tomorrow night, the old warehouse district. They want to discuss terms for your surrender. After the man left, Naomi could see Seojin's internal struggle. You're thinking about giving up, she said. I'm thinking about keeping you alive. And I'm thinking about keeping you human. What does that mean? It means don't go back to being the man you were just because it's easier. Don't let them drag you back into the darkness. Then what do you suggest? Go as the man you want to be, not the man they expect. They're expecting the old me, ruthless, violent. Then surprise them. With what? With the truth. With proof that your way works better than theirs. He looked at her as if she were speaking a foreign language. Naomi, these aren't boardroom executives. These are killers. So were you. But you changed. Maybe they can too. And if they can't, then you do what you have to do, but you try the right way first. That night, as Seojin prepared for what could be his final confrontation, Naomi made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't just sit in the safe house while he walked into danger, not when she finally understood what he meant to her. She loved him, not the dangerous mafia boss, not the powerful crime lord, the man who had seen her sleeping in a bathroom and felt compassion instead of disgust. The man who was trying to rebuild an empire on foundation of respect instead of fear. The man who had asked her what kind of person she wanted to be and actually listened to the answer. While Seojin met with his lieutenants, planning strategy for the confrontation, Naomi was making plans of her own. She had grown up in neighborhoods where survival meant understanding power dynamics, reading people, knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. She had skills that Seojin's world had taught her to hide. But maybe it was time to stop hiding. The next evening, as Seojin prepared to leave for the warehouse meeting, he found Naomi waiting by the door. "You're not going alone," she said. "Absolutely not. You said I make you human. Maybe that's exactly what you need tonight." "It's too dangerous." "Everything worthwhile is dangerous. You taught me that." They stared at each other, both knowing this was bigger than just one night, one confrontation. "If you come with me," he said slowly, "there's no going back. You'll be part of this world forever." "I'm already part of it. The question is whether I'm going to be a victim or a participant. And your choice. I choose to stand with you." He studied her face, seeing the determination that had carried her through 3 jobs and night school, the courage that had made her save strangers during the attack. "All right," he said finally, "but we do this my way. You stay behind me, you follow my lead, and if I tell you to run, you run." "Agreed." "And Naomi?" "Yes. Whatever happens tonight, I want you to know, you changed my life. You changed mine too." As they prepared to leave, Seojin's phone rang. It was his most trusted lieutenant, Min Jae. "Boss, we've got intelligence on Daeho's plan. He's not just coming to negotiate. He's planning to eliminate you and take over your entire operation." "How many men is he bringing?" "At least 20, maybe more." Seojin looked at Naomi, who had heard every word. "We can call this off," Yemi said. "Find another way." "No," she said firmly. "Running away won't solve anything. It'll just postpone the problem." "You're talking about walking into a trap." "I'm talking about walking into an opportunity to prove that your way works." "How?" "By showing them what real strength looks like." The confrontation came at dawn, in the abandoned warehouse district where Seoul's underground business was traditionally settled. But instead of bringing an army, Seojin arrived with only 2 trusted men and Naomi, a decision that shocked both his allies and enemies. He faced the coalition of rival bosses, men who had known him since he was his father's heir, men who remembered when he ruled through fear alone. Kim Daeho stepped forward, sneering at the sight of Naomi. "You bring a cleaning lady to a war council. You've lost your mind, Ryu." "No," Seojin replied calmly. "I found it." "You think compassion makes you strong?" Daeho laughed. "You think treating servants like equals gives you power?" "I think," Naomi said, stepping forward before Seojin could respond, "that you're afraid." The warehouse fell silent. No one had expected the cleaning lady to speak. "Afraid of what?" Daeho snarled. "Afraid that his way works better than yours. Afraid that people follow him by choice now, not fear. Afraid that you can't compete with respect." "You dare." "I dare because I've lived in both worlds," Naomi continued, her voice steady despite the danger. "I've seen what fear creates, broken people, broken communities, broken families, and I've seen what respect builds, loyalty, strength, hope." She gestured to Seojin's men, who stood relaxed but alert, confident in their leader. "Look at them, really look. They're not here because they're afraid of disappointing him. They're here because they believe in him." Daeho's face reddened with rage, but before he could respond, Seojin stepped forward. "You want to judge my leadership?" Seojin said. "Then let's compare results." What happened next would be talked about in Seoul's underworld for years. Instead of the expected violence, Seojin presented evidence, meticulously gathered proof of corruption within the rival factions. Embezzlement, betrayal of their own people, cruelty that served no purpose beyond sadistic pleasure. My people are loyal by choice, not fear, Seojin continued. My businesses thrive because workers want to succeed, not because they're afraid to fail. And my enemies. He gestured to the evidence. My enemies destroy themselves with their own greed. The confrontation shifted as several of Daeho's own men began examining the evidence. Whispers spread through the warehouse as they recognized their own experiences in the documented abuses. This is what your strength creates, Naomi added, her voice carrying across the space. Fear, betrayal, weakness disguised as power. One of Daeho's lieutenants stepped forward. Boss, this is all true. My cousin was beaten for asking about his missing wages. Another man nodded. My brother was forced to work without pay for 3 months. The tide was turning. Daeho could see his support crumbling. You think you can buy loyalty with kindness? He spat. Let me show you what real power looks like. Daeho pulled a gun, aiming it directly at Naomi. Let's see how strong your compassion makes you when she's dead. The warehouse erupted into chaos, but Seojin moved faster than thought. Years of training, of surviving in a world where hesitation meant death, compressed into a single moment of protective fury. The fight was swift, decisive, and final. When it ended, Daeho lay unconscious, his weapons scattered across the concrete floor. But the real victory wasn't physical. It was the sight of half the rival faction's men switching sides, choosing Seojin's vision over their former leader's brutality. Anyone else want to test whether respect is weakness? Seojin asked the remaining opposition. The answer was silence. As the warehouse cleared, leaving only Seojin's people and the new defectors, Naomi found herself shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline and the realization of what they had just accomplished. You were incredible, Seojin said, pulling her into his arms. We were incredible, she corrected. When you stepped forward to speak, I couldn't let them define you by their fears. You're not the man they remember. No, he agreed. I'm the man you helped me become. They stood together in the empty warehouse, surrounded by the debris of an old order and the promise of something new. What happens now? Naomi asked. Now we build something better. Together. Even though I'm just a cleaning lady. You're not just anything, Seojin said firmly. You're the woman who saw a man sleeping in exhaustion and felt compassion. You're the woman who chose courage over safety. You're the woman who just helped reshape Seoul's underworld with nothing but truth and conviction. And you're the man who saw a woman sleeping in a bathroom and decided to become better. When he kissed her, it wasn't the desperate passion of movies, but something deeper. The quiet certainty of two people who had found their way to each other through darkness and decided to build something bright. The old order was broken. In its place, they would create something unprecedented, an organization that operated with honor, a relationship built on mutual respect, and a future where power served to protect rather than exploit. As they walked out of the warehouse together, Naomi couldn't help but smile at the irony. She had fallen asleep in a bathroom, exhausted and invisible. She was walking out of a warehouse as a partner to one of Seoul's most powerful men, having helped reshape the criminal underworld through nothing but courage and truth. Sometimes, she thought, the most extraordinary transformations begin in the most ordinary moments. Min-jae approached them as they reached the car. Boss, what do we do with the ones who surrendered? Seojin looked at Naomi, then back at his lieutenant. We give them a choice. They can join us and learn a new way, or they can leave Seoul and start fresh somewhere else. But no one gets punished for their leader's mistakes. And Daeho gets medical treatment and a one-way ticket out of Korea. He's finished here, but he doesn't have to die for it. Min-jae nodded, understanding that this too was part of the new order his boss was creating. As they drove back through Seoul's awakening streets, Naomi watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Are you ready for this? Seojin asked, following her gaze. For what comes next? I've been ready my whole life, she said. I just didn't know what I was getting ready for. Years later, Aurora Tower had become something unprecedented in Seoul's business district, a place where the cleaning staff were greeted by name, where security guards received the same medical benefits as executives, where respect flowed both up and down the corporate hierarchy. Naomi still worked there, but now as Director of Employee Relations, a position created specifically for her unique understanding of what people needed to thrive. She kept an office on the 34th floor, with a view of the bathroom where everything had started. Her business administration degree, completed with Seojin's support, hung on the wall next to photos of employee appreciation events and community outreach programs she had developed. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been resistance from old guard members of Seojin's organization, challenges from rival groups testing the new leadership style, and moments when both Naomi and Seojin questioned whether they were naive to think that compassion could coexist with power. But the results spoke for themselves. Employee turnover at Aurora Tower was virtually non-existent. Productivity had increased by 40%. And most importantly, the building had become a model that other businesses in Seoul were beginning to emulate. Seojin had transformed from a feared mafia boss into something more complex, still powerful, still commanding respect, but now wielding that power to protect rather than intimidate. His organization had evolved too, becoming a force for stability in Seoul's underground, preventing the chaos that had once been commonplace. The employee break room where they had shared their first real conversation had been renovated into a comfortable space with proper seating, a small library, and resources for workers pursuing education. A small plaque by the door read, "In honor of those who work multiple jobs to build better futures." They lived together now, in a home that balanced his need for security with her desire for normalcy. And sometimes late at night, when the weight of their respective responsibilities felt overwhelming, they would sit together in comfortable silence, remembering the exhausted woman and the dangerous man who had found each other in the most unlikely place. Love, they had learned, wasn't about saving each other. It was about choosing to grow together, to become better versions of themselves because they had someone worth becoming better for. On quiet mornings, when Naomi passed the bathroom where she had once collapsed from exhaustion, she would pause and remember. Not with shame, but with gratitude, because sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin in the most unexpected places. And sometimes, falling asleep in a bathroom can change two lives forever. The changes they had implemented rippled outward beyond Aurora Tower. Other businesses began adopting similar employee welfare programs. The city council had even reached out to Naomi for consultation on worker protection policies. "You know what the best part is?" Naomi said one evening as they stood on their balcony, looking out over the city they had helped change. "What's that?" "That little girl who used to clean houses with her mother, who was told she'd never amount to anything. She's helping write policy for one of the biggest cities in the world." Seojin pulled her closer. "And that boy who was taught that power meant making people afraid. He's learning that real strength comes from making people feel safe." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Seoul's lights twinkle below them, both aware that their story was still being written. And in a city where power usually corrupted and exhaustion usually destroyed, they had built something rare, a partnership based on respect, growth, and the radical idea that everyone, even cleaning ladies and mafia bosses, deserved to be seen, valued, and loved. Thank you for staying until the end. Korean Mafia Lovers has many more incredible transformation stories where unexpected encounters lead to powerful love. Subscribe to the channel and help us continue creating these amazing tales of redemption and romance.